I watched the lawyer's face as he slid the deed across the polished mahogany desk. A smug smile stretched across his thin lips, a predator who knew he had his prey cornered. My hand trembled as I signed the last line, the pen scratching like a whisper in the silent room. This was it. The deed to the warehouse I had bled and sweat for, the place I had called my own. The one place on earth I could truly say was mine. I stared at the man across from me, the man who had been my foster brother, the man who had just taken everything I had left. He didn't even know what he was really getting. He didn't know the weight of the sacrifice I was making or the secret it was hiding. He only saw the victory. He had no idea what was coming. Before I begin this story, can you tell me where in the world you're listening to from? Our story didn't begin with a sudden bang, but with a slow, creeping rot from within. It started with a boy named Jackson, all sharp edges and closed-off eyes, who arrived on our doorstep when I was 10 years old. My parents, Marbell and Oswin, had always been good people, but they were not prepared for a child with so much hurt. I watched as they poured all their love into him, trying to fix the emptiness he carried. They gave him guitar lessons, bought him a brand new bike, and spent hours in his room, talking softly behind a closed door. All the while I was outside, mowing the lawn, fixing the leaky gutters, and learning to change the oil in Oswin's rusty truck. I never asked for anything, and they never seemed to notice that I needed things too. I thought that was just how it was, my role in the family. I was the rock, the one who didn't need the special attention. Jackson, on the other hand, became the sun in our little solar system, and we all revolved around his needs, his wants, his moods. It was a silent agreement, unspoken and deeply ingrained. I never complained. I never said a word, but the resentment, a tiny jagged shard, lodged itself deep in my chest. It was a secret I kept from everyone, even myself. It was the price of being the good son, the strong one, the one who was supposed to be okay all the time. But I wasn't, and the more I watched them give him everything, the more that shard of resentment grew. Jackson never saw the work. He never saw the late nights I spent with Oswin in the garage, hunched over an engine, my hands covered in grease. He didn't see the long hours I put in at the construction site, saving every penny to buy a small piece of the world for myself. He only saw the easy life, the one I had that he didn't. In his mind I had everything, and he had nothing. That's how he justified his entitlement, his carelessness, his reckless abandon. I tried to talk to him, tried to show him the value of hard work, but he just laughed at me, a dismissive, cynical sound that cut deeper than any insult. He called me an old man, even when we were still kids, and told me I'd never get anywhere, just like our parents. He had no idea how much that hurt. He had no idea how much I wanted to prove him wrong. I didn't want their money. I didn't want their handouts. I just wanted them to see me, to acknowledge my effort, my existence. But they never did. So I learned to get by on my own, to rely on myself, to build my own world from the ground up. I built a life that was stable and secure, a life that I could be proud of. And for a while I thought I had everything I needed. But then came the call, the one that changed everything. The call that told me my parents, Marbell and Oswin, were gone. I went back to their home, a place that felt foreign and strange, to hear the will being read. I sat in a room full of lawyers and family friends, my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of grief and dread. The lawyer cleared his throat, a loud, jarring sound in the silence. He started to read the will, a long, boring document filled with legal jargon I didn't understand. And then he said the words that changed my life forever. The house, the land, the savings, the family business, everything was to be left to Jackson, with no mention of me. The shard in my chest broke, and a wave of hurt and betrayal washed over me, threatening to drown me. I looked at Jackson, who sat there with a blank expression on his face, a silent victory in his eyes. He had won, and I had lost everything. Jackson's victory was a hollow one. He inherited the house, the savings, and a mountain of debt our parents had hidden away. He promised he would take care of me, that he would do the right thing. But I knew better. I had watched him for years, and I knew that he only ever took care of himself. I had just buried my wife, Cassidy, the love of my life, the one person who truly saw me. I was lost, adrift, and grieving, and Jackson's promise felt like a life raft he was holding just out of my reach. The first month, he was generous. He let me stay in the spare room, he cooked me meals, and he even offered to help me find a job. But then the bills started to pile up, and the money started to disappear. He bought a flashy car, a new guitar, and a dozen new suits. He spent our parents' savings on things he didn't need, things that wouldn't last. I tried to talk to him, tried to warn him that he was heading down a dangerous path. But he just laughed at me, that same cynical, dismissive laugh that had haunted me for years. He told me I was just jealous, that I couldn't stand to see him happy. He told me that I had always been the lucky one, the one who had everything, even if I didn't get the money. He said he finally had a chance to live, and he wasn't going to let me ruin it for him. He said that I had always been the golden boy, the one they truly loved, the one they were so proud of. The money, he said, was just a small compensation for a lifetime of being in my shadow. The insult stung, but the truth in his words cut deeper. I had always tried to do the right thing, to be the person my parents wanted me to be. But Jackson had always seen that as a weakness, as a sign of my desperation for their approval. He didn't see the effort, the sacrifice, the quiet, unwavering love I had for them. He only saw the illusion of a perfect life, and he resented me for it. I watched as he slowly turned our family home into a monument to his recklessness. He threw lavish parties, invited strangers over, and trashed the place we had grown up in. He didn't care about the memories, about the history, about the people who had lived there. He just saw a place to party, a place to show off his newfound wealth. I tried to stop him, tried to talk some sense into him, but he just laughed at me and told me to get out of his house. I had no idea what he was talking about. This was my home, too. This was the place where I had grown up, where I had buried my wife, where I had lost my parents. But he didn't care. He told me that I had no claim to it, that it was his now, and that I had to leave. He was right. I had no claim. I had no legal right to be there. I was a guest in the house I had helped build, the house I had grown up in. The weight of his words, of his betrayal, was almost too much to bear. I walked out the door with nothing but the clothes on my back, a few pictures of Cassidy, and the gnawing feeling that I had just lost my last piece of home. I didn't know what I was going to do, or where I was going to go. The world felt cold and unforgiving. I had lost my wife, my parents, my home, and now, the one person I thought I could count on. The city lights seemed to mock me as I walked down the street, my heart heavy with grief and betrayal. I had no idea where I was going, or what I was going to do. I was alone, and I had nothing left. And then, I saw it. The one thing that would change my life forever. I walked for hours, the city's neon signs blurring into a kaleidoscope of meaningless color. My mind replayed Jackson's words, each one a fresh stab to the heart. Get out of my house. The sentence echoed in my head, a final brutal dismissal. I found myself on the edge of town, where the asphalt crumbled into dirt and the streetlights died out. That's when I saw it, a rusted, hulking structure, its corrugated metal walls scarred with graffiti and neglect. An old, faded "for sale" sign dangled crookedly from a chain-link fence. The place was a disaster, a forgotten relic of the Rust Belt's glory days. But to me it was a lifeline. It was a chance to rebuild, to create something that was truly my own, something Jackson could never touch. The last of my savings, a meager sum I had intended to use for a down payment on a small apartment, was enough to buy the place. The seller, a weary old man with a cloud of dust on his clothes, looked at me with pity. "Kid, you sure you want to buy this thing?" he asked, a hint of doubt in his voice. This ain't a place for a new beginning. But he was wrong. This was exactly what I needed. I spent the next few weeks cleaning, hammering, and welding. The work was backbreaking, but it was also therapeutic. Every nail I drove, every piece of rust I sanded away, felt like I was chipping away at the betrayal that had hardened my heart. I pictured Cassidy's smiling face in the dust motes floating in the sunbeams. I had promised her a better life, a life where we didn't have to worry about money, about our past. I had lost her before I could fulfill that promise, but now I had a chance to honor her memory in a way that truly mattered. I would turn this forgotten warehouse into a place of hope, a place where people like me, people who had been thrown away by the world, could find a new beginning. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to. I worked from dawn until dusk, fueled by a mixture of grief and pure unadulterated resolve. The warehouse was slowly but surely coming to life, and so was I. Jackson heard about my plan, of course. He showed up one day, his brand new sports car gleaming in the sun. He looked at the place with disgust, a sneer on his face. "You're wasting your money, Lyle," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "This place is a dump. You should have just come to me. I could have given you a handout." I just shook my head, my hands covered in grease and dust. "This is my handout, Jackson," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "This is my life. It's not for sale." He scoffed and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. I watched him go, a small, triumphant smile on my face. I had done it. I had proven him wrong. The next few months were a blur of hard work and small victories. I installed new windows, fixed the leaky roof, and painted the walls a bright, hopeful shade of white. The warehouse was starting to feel like a home, a place I could be proud of. And then the phone rang. It was Jackson. His voice was frantic, a stark contrast to his usual smugness. Lyle, I have big news, he said, his voice shaking. Something that will change everything. You need to get back to the house. Now, the moment Jackson's voice came through the phone, something in my stomach tightened into a hard, cold knot. The frantic desperation in his tone was a mask I had never heard him wear. It wasn't a request. It was an order. I had no idea what he was talking about, but the urgency in his voice was enough to make me drop my tools and head straight for the place I had been kicked out of. When I arrived at the family home, the sight that greeted me was enough to make my blood run cold. There were 3 shiny black sedans in the driveway, and a small army of men in expensive suits stood on the lawn, talking in hushed tones. Jackson was standing on the porch, a wide, triumphant smile on his face, his arms crossed over his chest like a king surveying his kingdom. My heart pounded against my ribs as I walked up the driveway, a sense of dread washing over me. I had a feeling this wasn't about a truce. It was about something far more sinister. Jackson saw me and his smile widened, a cruel, predatory gleam in his eyes. Lyle, you made it, he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. I have a little surprise for you. I stood my ground, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. What is this, Jackson? What do you want? He laughed, a short, sharp sound that was devoid of any humor. Oh, I don't want anything from you, brother, he said, the word brother sounding like a curse. I'm here to give you a little gift. The truth. He gestured to one of the men in a suit, who stepped forward and opened a briefcase. Inside, a stack of legal documents sat on a bed of velvet. My heart sank. This wasn't a family reunion. This was a legal ambush. The man, a tall, gaunt-looking lawyer with a cold, dead stare, introduced himself as Jackson's legal counsel. He explained that Jackson had won a massive multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the company that had manufactured the faulty equipment that was linked to our father's death. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had always believed our father's death was a tragic accident, but the lawyer explained that it wasn't. It was a secret our parents had kept from me, a secret that had haunted Jackson for years. The lawyer explained that our father, Oswin, had worked for the company that made the faulty equipment. He had known about the defect. He had been offered a large settlement to keep quiet, and he had taken it. The company had gone bankrupt, and the lawsuit had been tied up in court for years. But now Jackson had won. The payout was a staggering $95 million. My head was spinning. All these years I had believed that our father had died a hero, a victim of a tragic accident. But he had died a victim of greed, his own and the company's. Jackson's face was a mask of triumph as he watched my expression change from shock to disbelief to pure, unadulterated rage. And you knew, I said, my voice a low, dangerous growl. You knew all of this, and you didn't tell me. He just shrugged, a look of indifference on his face. It wasn't my place to tell you, Lyle, he said, his voice as cold as ice. Besides, you wouldn't have believed me. You always believed in the fairy tale, didn't you? That our parents were perfect, that our family was perfect. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn down the house he had inherited, the house that had been built on a foundation of lies. But I stood my ground, my hands trembling with rage. What about me, Jackson? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What about my share? He laughed, a cruel, triumphant sound that echoed in the silent afternoon. Your share? He asked, a look of mock surprise on his face. Oh, Lyle, you were never a part of the family. You were just a guest. And now you're not even that. I have a surprise for you, a little something to remember me by. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what he was talking about. And then he gestured to a man in a police uniform who was standing behind one of the black sedans. The man walked towards me, a stack of papers in his hand. My stomach dropped. I had a bad feeling about this. A very bad feeling. The policeman walked towards me, a grim expression on his face. My eyes darted from his uniform to the papers in his hand, a chilling dread seeping into my bones. Jackson just watched, a satisfied smirk plastered on his face. What is this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The policeman didn't say a word. He just handed me the papers and turned to leave. I looked down at the documents in my hands, my heart pounding against my ribs. It was a restraining order. It said I was forbidden from coming within 500 feet of Jackson, our parents' home, or any property he owned. It also included a provision stating that I was barred from contacting him in any way, shape, or form. My hands trembled as I read the words, the ink a cold, harsh reality against the white paper. Jackson had not only kicked me out, he had legally severed all ties with me. He had made sure that I could never come back. I stood there, a statue of disbelief, as he and his lawyers got into their cars and drove away, leaving me alone in the quiet afternoon. I felt sick. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a calculated, cold-hearted plan to ruin me. He had used the family home, the lawsuit, and the secret of our father's death to get rid of me, once and for all. He had planned this from the very beginning. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to lean against the fence to keep from falling over. I stumbled back to my warehouse, the papers clutched in my hand like a death certificate. I didn't know what to do. My world had been turned upside down, and I had no idea how to right it. I had no money, no home, and now no family. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a hollowness that I had never felt before. I had lost everything, and there was nothing I could do about it. The restraining order was a legal document, and I had no way of fighting it. I had no money for a lawyer, no evidence, no way of proving that Jackson had planned this all along. I felt defeated, broken, and alone. But then I remembered Cassidy. I remembered her smile, her laugh, her unwavering belief in me. I remembered the promise I had made to her, the promise to build a life we could be proud of. I knew I couldn't give up, not now, not ever. The next day I went to see the only lawyer I could afford, a grizzled old man named Silas who worked out of a cramped office above a pawn shop. He listened to my story, his eyes never leaving mine, a look of grim determination on his face. He read the restraining order, his expression softening as he looked at the legal jargon. He shook his head, a look of pity on his face. "Kid, this is a tough one," he said, his voice a low rumble. "This is a legal minefield. Jackson's lawyer has done a good job. They've made sure there's no way for you to fight this, not without a lot of money." My heart sank. I knew it. I knew I couldn't fight him. But then Silas's expression changed. A glint of mischief appeared in his eyes. "But," he said, his voice a low whisper, "there's a loophole, a small one, but it's there. But it's going to cost you. Not money, something far more valuable. You're going to have to give up something of your own, something you care about more than anything in the world." I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what he was talking about. He leaned forward, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "The warehouse," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "You're going to have to put the deed to your warehouse in escrow. That's the only way to challenge his claim and expose his lies." My mind raced. Was he insane? The warehouse was the only thing I had left. It was my hope, my dream, my promise to Cassidy. I couldn't give it up. I couldn't risk losing it. But I also knew I couldn't let Jackson win. This wasn't just about money. This was about justice. This was about family. This was about honoring the legacy of my parents and my wife. I had to do it. I had to take the risk. I had to give up everything for a chance to win. I looked at Silas, my eyes filled with a new resolve. "I'll do it," I said, my voice firm. "I'll do it." The ride to Silas's office was a blur of fear and determination. The deed to my warehouse, the paper I had worked so hard for, felt heavy in my hands. It was the only tangible thing I had left to show for my life, the only piece of my world that was truly my own. Now, I was about to put it all on the line. I walked into the office, the smell of old books and coffee filling my lungs. Silas was sitting at his desk, his face grim. He laid the papers out on the desk, a silent, somber invitation to sign my life away. "You don't have to do this, Lyle," he said, his voice a low whisper. "You can walk away. You can find a new life somewhere else. Jackson can't touch you there." But he was wrong. Jackson had already touched me. He had poisoned my family, my memories, my life. I couldn't just walk away. I had to fight. I had to make him pay for what he had done. I picked up the pen, my hand trembling as I prepared to sign the documents. The weight of the decision was almost too much to bear. I was risking everything, my entire future, for a slim chance at justice. I closed my eyes, picturing Cassidy's face, her smile, her laugh. I could feel her presence in the room, a warm, comforting embrace. She would have wanted me to do this. She would have wanted me to fight. I opened my eyes and signed the papers. My hand was steady now, my mind clear. The decision was made. The die was cast. The warehouse was no longer mine. It was a pawn in a game I was forced to play. A game with my brother. A game for my life. The legal process was slow and agonizing. Every day felt like a week. Every week felt like a month. I spent my days working on the warehouse, my nights poring over the legal documents, trying to understand the endless jargon. I was a man on a mission, a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain. Jackson, on the other hand, was losing his mind. Silas kept me updated on his progress, or lack thereof. He said that Jackson was in a panic. He had no idea what I was doing, or why I was risking everything. He thought I was just a sad, broken old man who was too poor to fight him. But now, he knew better. He knew I had a secret weapon, a legal maneuver that could expose his lies and ruin his life. He was scared. He was losing control, and he hated it. He started to call me, leaving angry, threatening messages on my phone. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I had a lawyer who was doing the talking for me. The calls got more and more desperate, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and rage. He couldn't understand why I was doing this. He couldn't understand why I wasn't just taking the money and walking away. He didn't know that this wasn't about money. This was about family. This was about justice. This was about honor. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into. He had no idea what I was capable of. The more he panicked, the more confident I became. He had underestimated me. He had made a mistake, and he was going to pay for it. I was ready for him. I was ready for anything. I was ready to win. And then, Silas called me. His voice was grim, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. Lyle, he said, his voice a low whisper. Jackson's lawyer just made an offer. A really big one. You're not going to believe this. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no idea what was coming. Silas's voice was filled with a mixture of shock and disbelief. He's offering you $20 million for the warehouse, he said, the words hanging in the air like a cloud of smoke. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, my mind racing. $20 million for a warehouse that was worth maybe $100,000. It was an insane offer. It was a joke. Jackson was playing a game, and I had no idea what the rules were. Tell him no, I said, my voice quiet and firm. Tell him I'm not selling. Silas was silent for a moment, and then he let out a long, slow sigh. Lyle, are you sure? This is a life-changing amount of money. You could buy a new house, a new car, a new life. You could finally be free of this mess. He was right. I could. But I couldn't. This wasn't about money. This was about honor. This was about family. This was about the truth. I had to fight. I had to win. I had to prove to Jackson, and to myself, that I was not a pawn in his game. I was a player. I was a contender. I was going to win. I wasn't going to let him get away with what he had done. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me. Tell him no, Silas, I repeated, my voice as hard as stone. Tell him I'm not selling. Not for 20 million, not for 100 million, not for all the money in the world. The next day, Jackson's lawyer called again. The offer was now up to 30 million, then 40, then 50. The number kept rising, but my answer was always the same. No. The desperation in his voice was palpable. He couldn't understand why I was refusing. He couldn't understand why I wasn't just taking the money and running. He had no idea that I wasn't playing his game. I was playing my own. I was playing for a higher purpose, for something far more valuable than money. I was playing for my life, for my family, for my honor. I was going to win. And then the calls stopped. For a whole day, there was silence. I felt a sense of unease, a gnawing feeling that something was wrong. Jackson had never given up so easily. He had never backed down from a fight. This was a trap. I knew it. But I didn't know what it was. I spent the day working on the warehouse, my mind racing, trying to figure out what he was up to. I didn't know if he was planning something, if he was going to try to ruin me in some other way. I had to be ready. I had to be prepared. I had to be one step ahead of him, always. The next morning, the phone rang. It was Silas. His voice was a low, urgent whisper. Lyle, I just got off the phone with Jackson's lawyer, he said, his voice shaking with a mix of shock and fear. He just made an offer that's so crazy I can't even believe it's real. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had no idea what was coming. He's offering you $95 million for the warehouse, Silas said, his voice barely a whisper. I stood there, dumbfounded, the phone pressed against my ear. 95 million. It was the full amount of Jackson's inheritance. It was an impossible offer. It was a sign that something was very wrong. Why? I asked, my voice a low, dangerous growl. Why is he offering me all of it? What is he hiding? Silas was silent for a moment, and then he let out a long, slow sigh. That's what I asked him, he said, his voice grim. He didn't want to tell me at first. But I pushed. I told him that if he wanted the warehouse, he had to tell me the truth. All of it. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I had a feeling that I was about to hear something that would change everything, something that would turn this whole story on its head. He told me that Jackson's inheritance is tied up in a legal trust, Silas said, his voice a low rumble. He can't access any of it, not a single penny. It's all tied up until he can prove that he has a stable business, a place where he can build a future, a place he can use as collateral for a loan. My mind raced. The warehouse. He needed the warehouse. He didn't just want to buy it from me. He needed it. He was trapped. He had all the money in the world, and he couldn't touch it. He was a prisoner of his own greed. He had kicked me out. He had betrayed me. He had tried to ruin me. And now he was begging for my help. I felt a wave of cold, hard satisfaction wash over me. He had underestimated me. He had made a mistake, and he was going to pay for it. He was going to lose everything. I knew what I had to do. I had to meet with him. I had to see the fear in his eyes. I had to see the desperation. I had to make him face me, face the man he had wronged. I had to make him tell me the truth, all of it. I had to know why he had done this to me, why he had gone to such great lengths to ruin me. I had to know the full story. I called Silas back and told him to set up a meeting. Jackson's lawyer was hesitant at first, but he eventually agreed. The meeting was set for the next day, in a small, quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. I knew it was a risk. I knew that he might be planning something, but I also knew that I had to take it. I had to face him. I had to look him in the eye and ask him why. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I spent the rest of the day working on the warehouse, my mind racing with possibilities. I was ready for anything. I was ready to win. I was ready to face him, face the man who had stolen my life. I was going to make him pay. And then a thought occurred to me, a thought that sent a chill down my spine. What if there was more to this story? What if the truth was something I couldn't even imagine? What if the betrayal went deeper than I thought? What if there was a secret that connected our father's death, Jackson's inheritance, and my wife Cassidy? I had to know. I had to find out. I had to get to the bottom of this. And then I had an idea. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly what to say. I was going to use his desperation against him. I was going to force him to tell me the truth. I was going to win this game, once and for all. I had no idea what was coming. I walked into the coffee shop, the bell above the door chiming a cheerful, jarring sound that felt out of place. Jackson was already there, sitting in a dark corner, his face grim. He looked smaller, older, the light of his smug victory long gone. He hadn't bothered to bring his lawyer. He was a man alone, cornered and desperate. The sight of him, so broken and defeated, gave me no satisfaction. I just felt a quiet, simmering anger. I sat down across from him, my hands clasped on the table, my gaze unwavering. We sat in silence for a long time, the clatter of plates and the murmur of conversation filling the air. He finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "Lyle," he said, his voice hoarse. "What do you want?" I didn't answer right away. I just watched him, letting the silence fill the room, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. "I want to know why," I said, my voice a low whisper. "I want to know why you did this to me. Why you kicked me out. Why you lied to me. Why you took everything I had left." He looked away, his jaw tight. He knew he had no escape, no alibi, no excuse. "It wasn't about the money, Lyle," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It was about the truth. The truth about our father." My heart pounded against my ribs. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had always believed our father's death was a tragic accident, a terrible, unfortunate mistake. But Jackson's words hinted at something far more sinister. "What truth?" I asked, my voice as hard as stone. "What are you talking about?" He took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he laid them on the table. "Our father didn't die a hero, Lyle," he said, his voice a low rumble. "He died a coward. He knew about the faulty equipment. He knew it was dangerous. He knew it was going to kill him. But he didn't say a word. He kept it a secret from the company. He kept it a secret from us. He wanted the payout. He wanted the money. He wanted to die a rich man." My mind reeled. This was a whole new level of betrayal, a whole new layer of lies. Our father, the man I had looked up to, the man I had worked so hard to please, the man who had taught me everything I knew, had been a fraud. He had been a selfish, greedy man who had traded his life for money. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to close my eyes. I had no idea what to believe anymore. The world I had built for myself, the world I had believed in, was crumbling to dust. I looked at Jackson, my eyes filled with a new understanding, a new kind of pain. "And you knew," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You knew all of this, and you didn't tell me." He just shook his head, a look of despair on his face. "I couldn't, Lyle," he said, his voice filled with a terrible, aching sorrow. "I couldn't. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to see him for what he was. I wanted you to remember him as the good man, the hero, the father you loved. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had always believed that our father was a good man. I had always believed that he had done the right thing. But now, I knew the truth. I knew that he had been a liar, a fraud, a coward. He had betrayed me, our mother, and our family. He had betrayed us all. I looked at Jackson, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what to say, what to do. The silence in the room was deafening. He had told me the truth, all of it. He had told me the reason for his actions. He had told me why he had gone to such great lengths to get rid of me. He had told me that he had done it all for my own good. But I didn't believe him, not yet. I knew there was more. I knew there was a secret he was still hiding. I knew there was a reason he had gone to such great lengths to get rid of me. And then, he looked at me, his eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of fear. He leaned in close, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "Lyle," he said, his voice shaking. "There's something else. Something you don't know. Something about Cassidy." The world stopped. The clatter of plates, the hum of the coffee machine, the murmur of conversation, all of it faded into a dull roar. The only thing I could hear was the frantic pounding of my own heart. "What about Cassidy?" I asked, my voice as cold as ice. Jackson looked at me, his eyes filled with a terrible, aching sorrow. He took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he laid them on the table. "She knew," he said, his voice a low whisper. "She knew about our father. She knew about the money. She knew he was a liar. And she kept it from you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to close my eyes. My mind reeled. Cassidy, my wife, the love of my life. The one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. She had betrayed me. She had kept a secret from me. A secret that had been eating away at our family for years. She had known about our father's cowardice, his greed, his lies, and she hadn't said a word. She had let me believe that he was a good man, a hero, a victim. She had let me live a lie. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a hollowness that I had never felt before. I had lost everything. My parents, my brother, my home, and now my wife. The one person who was supposed to be there for me, the one person who was supposed to have my back, had betrayed me. I felt a cold, hard rage building inside of me. A rage so powerful it threatened to consume me whole. I looked at Jackson, my eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of anger. "Why?" I asked, my voice a low growl. "Why did she do it?" Jackson shook his head, a look of despair on his face. "She did it for you, Lyle," he said, his voice a low whisper. "She didn't want you to know. She didn't want you to see him for what he was. She knew how much you loved him. She knew it would break your heart. She thought she was protecting you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea what he was talking about. I had always believed that Cassidy was a good person. I had always believed that she had done the right thing. But now I knew the truth. I knew that she had been a liar, a fraud, a coward. She had betrayed me, our family, and our love. She had betrayed us all. I looked at Jackson, my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea what to say, what to do. The silence in the room was deafening. He had told me the truth, all of it. He had told me the reason for his actions. He had told me why he had gone to such great lengths to get rid of me. He had told me that he had done it all for my own good, but I didn't believe him. Not yet. I knew there was more. I knew there was a secret he was still hiding. I knew there was a reason he had gone to such great lengths to get rid of me. And then he looked at me, his eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of fear. He leaned in close, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "Lyle," he said, his voice shaking. "I have a confession to make. The warehouse, the money, it's all a lie. I don't want to buy it from you. I need it. I need it to get my money. I'll give you the 95 million, Lyle, all of it. Just give me the warehouse. Just let me have it and I'll leave you alone, I promise." Jackson's plea hung in the air, a desperate, pathetic echo. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the new layers of lies and truths. He wasn't just trying to buy the warehouse, he needed it. The $95 million was a key, but the warehouse was the lock. I looked at him, my eyes filled with a new understanding, a new kind of pity. He wasn't just cruel. He was a prisoner, a man trapped by his own greed and the secrets he had kept. "Why, Jackson?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. "Why do you need the warehouse? What's in it that's so valuable?" He looked away, his jaw tight. He knew he had to tell me. He had no other choice. The trust, he said, his voice a low whisper. The legal trust. It's not just a loan, it's a settlement for the rest of our family. Our parents knew about the money, but they hid it from me too. They set up the trust so I couldn't access it until I could prove that I had a stable business, a place where I could build a future, a place that was, in their words, a monument to hard work and perseverance. A place that you, Lyle, were supposed to build. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Our parents had planned this. They had known all along. They had set up a trap for Jackson, a way to force him to be a better man, a way to force him to be more like. They had given him the money, but they had also given him a responsibility, a burden he couldn't bear, and they had used me as a pawn in their game. I was their tool, their weapon against Jackson's recklessness. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, and I had to close my eyes. I had no idea what to believe anymore. The world I had built for myself, the world I had believed in, was crumbling to dust. I looked at Jackson, my eyes filled with a mix of pity and a new, more terrible understanding. "And what about the warehouse?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What's in it that you need?" He took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he laid them on the table. "Our father," he said, his voice a low rumble. "He didn't just hide the money. He hid a mountain of documents, legal papers, and evidence from the company. He hid it all in the warehouse. He left a note for me, telling me that if I ever wanted to get the money, I had to find the documents. He knew I couldn't do it alone. He knew I would need your help." My mind reeled. The warehouse, the place I had worked so hard to build, the place I had believed was my own, was nothing more than a storage unit for my father's dirty secrets. It was a monument to his lies, a testament to his greed. I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a hollowness that I had never felt before. I had lost everything. My parents, my brother, my home, and now my wife. The one person who was supposed to be there for me, the one person who was supposed to have my back, had betrayed me. I felt a cold, hard rage building inside of me, a rage so powerful it threatened to consume me whole. I looked at Jackson, my eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of anger. "You lied to me," I said, my voice a low growl. "You lied to me from the very beginning. You knew about the documents. You knew about the money. You knew about everything, and you still kicked me out. Why, Jackson? Why?" He just shook his head, a look of despair on his face. "I couldn't tell you, Lyle," he said, his voice filled with a terrible, aching sorrow. I didn't want you to know the truth. I didn't want you to see our father for what he was." And then I heard a voice behind me, a stern, authoritative voice. "Sir, what are you doing here?" I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest. A security guard was standing there, his hand on his hip. I had no idea what he was doing here. I had no idea what was coming. The security guard, a hulking man with a stern face, was looking at me with suspicion. Jackson, a triumphant smirk returning to his face, stood up. The desperate, pathetic man who had begged for my help was gone, replaced by the cruel, cynical man I had known for years. He had played me. He had used the coffee shop as a meeting place. Knowing that I would be there, knowing that he could set a trap for me, I felt a cold, hard rage building inside of me, a rage so powerful it threatened to consume me whole. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to burn down the house he had inherited, the house that had been built on a foundation of lies. But I stood my ground, my hands trembling with rage. "What's going on here?" the security guard asked, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Are you trespassing?" Jackson stepped forward, his face a mask of false innocence. "Officer, this man has been harassing me," he said, his voice a high-pitched whine. "He's been following me, threatening me, and trying to steal my money. I have a restraining order against him. He's not supposed to be here." The security guard looked at me, his eyes filled with suspicion. I knew he wouldn't believe me. I knew he would believe Jackson. He was a rich man. I was a poor, homeless man, who had just been served with a restraining order. It was his word against mine. I was a man trapped, a man with no way out. But then I remembered Silas. I remembered the legal documents he had given me. I remembered the loophole. I remembered the way I had planned to use his desperation against him. I had to do it. I had to take the risk. I had to prove that I wasn't just a pawn in his game. I was a player. I was a contender. I was going to win. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. I had no idea what it was or what it would do. I just knew that it was my only chance, my only way out, my only way to win. The security guard looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of pity and suspicion. He had no idea what was coming. I unfolded the document and handed it to him. His eyes widened as he read the words, his face draining of color. He looked at Jackson, then back at me, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He shook his head, a look of confusion on his face. He handed the document back to me and turned to leave. Jackson, a look of triumph on his face, looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and confusion. "What was that?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "What did you show him?" I just smiled, a cold, hard smile that was devoid of any humor. "It was a legal document," I said, my voice a low whisper. "It was a legal maneuver that proved you had no claim to the money, and that the restraining order was a fraud. It was a legal trap, a trap you fell right into." Jackson's face went white. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that I had been one step ahead of him the whole time. He had no idea that I had planned this. He had no idea that I had used his desperation against him. He had no idea that I was going to win. He had no idea what was coming. And then he looked at me, his eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of fear. He leaned in close, his voice a low, urgent whisper. "Lyle," he said, his voice shaking. "What did you do? What did you do to me?" I just smiled, a cold, hard smile that was devoid of any humor. "I won," I said, my voice a low whisper. "I won." Jackson stared at me, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. The smug, triumphant man was gone, replaced by a hollow-eyed shell. He knew I had won. He knew he had lost. But he didn't know how. "What did you show him?" he asked again, his voice trembling. "What was in that document?" I just smiled, a cold, hard smile that was devoid of any humor. I pulled the paper out of my pocket and laid it on the table between us. It was a faded, yellowed piece of paper, its edges frayed and torn. The title, scrawled in my father's familiar hand, read, "Last Will and Testament of Oswin, and my love for my son Lyle." Jackson's eyes widened as he read the words. He looked at me, then back at the document, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He shook his head, a look of confusion on his face. "What is this?" he asked, his voice a low whisper. "What are you talking about?" I just smiled, a cold, hard smile that was devoid of any humor. "It's the truth, Jackson," I said, my voice a low whisper. "The truth you've been running from for years. Our father didn't leave you everything. He didn't forget about me. He didn't abandon me." Jackson's face went white. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming. I unfolded the document and laid it flat on the table. It was a letter, written in our father's hand, addressed to me. It talked about his regrets, his mistakes, his cowardice. It talked about the money, the secrets, the lies. But it also talked about his love for me, his unwavering belief in me. It talked about his shame, his guilt, his regret. He had been a selfish, greedy man, a man who had traded his life for money. But he had also been a man who had loved his son, a man who had wanted to do the right thing. He had written the letter to me, a last, final confession. He had hidden it in the warehouse, in a secret compartment he had built himself. He had left a key that only I had, a key that I had found after his death. He had known that I would find it. He had known that I would do the right thing. He had known that I would use it to expose the company, to expose the lies, to expose the truth. I looked at Jackson, my eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of sorrow. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming. I had always believed that our father had been a good man, a hero, a victim. But now I knew the truth. I knew that he had been a liar, a fraud, a coward. But he had also been a man who had loved his son. He had left me the one thing he had left in the world. He had left me the truth. And now I was going to use it to win. I was going to use it to expose the company, to expose the lies, to expose the truth. I was going to use it to get my revenge. Jackson just stared at the document, his eyes filled with a mix of shock and disbelief. He had no idea what to say, what to do. The silence in the room was deafening. He had always believed that he had won, but now he knew the truth. He had lost. He had lost everything. He had lost his money, his family, his future, and now he was going to pay for it. The air in the coffee shop was thick with unspoken truths. Jackson's face was ashen. The color drained from him, his eyes fixated on the letter from our father. He had built his entire identity on the lie that he was the rightful heir, that he had earned the inheritance, and that I was the one who had been abandoned. The letter on the table was a final, brutal refutation of everything he believed. It was the ultimate betrayal, not from me, but from the man he had idolized. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. I had all the leverage. I had the truth, the money, the legal documents, the power to ruin him. I could expose him for the fraud he was, take the entire $95 million and leave him with nothing. I could watch him lose everything, just like he had watched me lose everything. I could finally get my revenge. A part of me wanted to. A part of me wanted to see him suffer, to see him lose everything he had so carelessly taken from me. A part of me wanted to watch him beg, to watch him fall, to watch him crumble to dust. It would be a fitting end to a long, painful chapter in my life. But another part of me, a small, quiet voice in the back of my mind, was telling me to stop. To stop the cycle of hate, of revenge, of betrayal. It was the voice of Cassidy, the voice that had always guided me, the voice that had always told me to do the right thing. She wouldn't have wanted this. She wouldn't have wanted me to become a monster, to become just like him. She would have wanted me to find a way to heal, a way to forgive, a way to move on. Jackson finally looked up, his eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of fear. He knew what was coming. He knew I had the power to destroy him. He knew I had the power to take everything he had left. He knew I had the power to make him pay for his sins. He just sat there, waiting for my final verdict. He was a man who had lost everything. A man who had nowhere to go, a man who had no one to turn to. He had no family, no friends, no money, no future. He was a prisoner of his own making, a man who had built his own cage. I looked at him, my heart pounding in my chest. I had a choice to make. A final, ultimate choice. I could choose to be a man of revenge, a man of hate, a man who would watch his brother burn. Or I could choose to be a man of redemption, a man of forgiveness, a man who would help his brother heal. It was a choice between two paths, two futures, two different kinds of men. I closed my eyes, picturing Cassidy's face, her smile, her laugh. I could feel her presence in the room, a warm, comforting embrace. She would have wanted me to do the right thing. She would have wanted me to be a better man. She would have wanted me to find a way to heal. I opened my eyes and looked at Jackson, my mind clear, my heart at peace. I knew what I had to do. I knew what I had to say. I knew what my final choice was going to be. I slid the letter from our father back into my pocket, the weight of his love a warm, comforting presence. "I'm not taking your money, Jackson," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I'm not taking anything." He looked at me, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city streets. "I'm not going to ruin you," I said, my voice a low whisper. "I'm not going to destroy you. I'm not going to watch you fall. I'm going to help you." He just sat there, speechless, his eyes wide with shock. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming. I turned back to him, a small, sad smile on my face. "The documents in the warehouse," I said, my voice a low rumble. "They're not just for you. They're for the world. They're evidence against the company, evidence that will prove they were responsible for our father's death. I'm going to use them to expose the truth. I'm going to use them to get justice, not for the money, but for the honor of our father, and for the memory of Cassidy." He just sat there, speechless, his eyes filled with a new kind of pain, a new kind of sorrow. He had no idea what to say, what to do. The silence in the room was deafening. He had always believed that he had won, but now he knew the truth. He had lost. He had lost everything. He had lost his money, his family, his future. But he had also found something new. He had found a chance at redemption, a chance at a new life, a chance at a new beginning. I walked back to my warehouse, my heart at peace, my mind clear. The deed to the warehouse, the paper I had worked so hard for, was no longer in my possession, but I didn't care. I had something far more valuable. I had my honor. I had my family. I had my future. I had my life. I had everything I had ever wanted. The next few months were a blur of legal battles, court dates, and media attention. The documents from the warehouse, the truth about our father's death, the secret that had haunted our family for years, was finally revealed to the world. The company was forced to pay a massive settlement, a settlement that was used to create a foundation in Cassidy's name, a foundation that would help other families who had lost loved ones due to corporate negligence. I didn't take a single penny. I didn't want it. I had my honor. I had my family. I had my future. I had my life. I had everything I had ever wanted. The warehouse, the place I had worked so hard to build, was now a community center, a place where people who had been thrown away by the world could find a new beginning. It was a monument to my wife, a monument to our love, a monument to our promise. One afternoon, as I was working on the roof, I saw a familiar face walking towards me. It was Jackson. He looked different. His flashy clothes were gone, replaced by a simple t-shirt and jeans. The arrogance in his eyes was gone, replaced by a look of quiet humility. He walked up to me, his hands in his pockets, his head bowed. "Lyle," he said, his voice a low whisper. "I have nothing. No money, no home, no family. I have nothing left." I just stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. He looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "I don't want your money, Lyle," he said, his voice filled with a terrible, aching sorrow. "I don't want your charity. I just want a job. I just want a chance to be a better man. I just want a chance to be a brother." I looked at him, my heart at peace. I had a choice to make, a final, ultimate choice. I could choose to be a man of revenge, a man of hate, a man who would watch his brother burn. Or I could choose to be a man of redemption, a man of forgiveness, a man who would help his brother heal. I extended my hand, a small sad smile on my face. "Welcome home, Jackson," I said, my voice a low whisper. "Welcome home." He just stood there, speechless, his eyes wide with shock. He had no idea what I was talking about. He had no idea what was coming.